few days or weeks or months or years. It all goes down to the ability to give people substance, and that substance has to be packaged with a very, very unique way of approaching things. There has to be creativity. It has to have a lot of intensity. Of course, there is consistency. It comes down to curiosity, and everything that you are curious about is huge content. If you are curious about anything, that is content. Every time you ask yourself something that is weird, that is content. Elements of surprise also come in. That is why there is edgy. I like to talk about mystery and giving people something that they have never thought about. And I like to give the example of a product I supported where we took the whole nation to the mortuary. Because what happens usually is people go to collect their loved ones in the morgue and they pray out there, and they take the body, they put it in the hearse, and they go home. But this time I was just wondering, this hospital, how huge can you be? And do you have a morgue? Yes, you do. Does anybody know what is behind there? Because I don't know too. And if I don't know, how many people don't know? So let's go there. Let's go and show people where the postmortem happens. Let's show them where the kids are stored and the mothers and the children. And everybody was calling each other, come, let's watch this. Have you seen this? And everybody's sharing, and everybody's saying, keep showing us, but don't show us the body. And they don't want, but they want. And that's mystery. And that is what people want, even when they don't know they want. Thank you very much.
Great. I love that. They want, but they don't want. That's a funny one. Be edgy, be innovative, and be different. Amazing insights, Chris. Thank you for that. Can I get a round of applause for Chris? Thank you. Moving on to Cynthia. Cynthia, are we still together?
Yes, we are, Vismithani. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. Let me just break the monotony a bit. What have you learned new from Glory, and what have you learned new from Chris, from the conversations that we are having tonight?
I think from Glory, she's walked me through her journey, which for me, it's her real examples. It's not every day that you'll find someone who'll walk you through how every day looks like her, especially at her workplace, what she's able to do and how she's utilizing communications to create and foster great, especially the part where she was talking about feedback. I was blown. It's like, I need to have a sit down with you and so we can discuss this even longer. I thought that was incredible. And for Chris, I had never heard of him talk about the mortuary journey. And he's right. He's very, very right. One thing I have learned about people and giving them information, there are certain things they want, but they will not say they want it, but also they will not tell you to stop. So they'll just play right in the middle. So you have to be also very safe on how you're giving this information to make sure that it is safe enough, but also you're passing on the message. So for me, it has been completely mind blowing.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you. Let me just go back to Chris a bit. Chris, the Mog story or analogy. Please share with us the backstory. Is it like a research? Or what marketing was this, and which hospital?
Of course, I may not be able to share the hospital
Oh,
because of
okay.
obvious reasons.
Mm.
But it wasn't a research, it was an account I was supporting at that time. What happened was this organization that invited me had mentioned that they had done the best they could ever do, and they were now frustrated. They were stuck. They had drained themselves so much that there's not much to do again, yet they had achieved 300% more impact based on the previous years. So now when I came in, one of the things I did was I just wanted to understand, where is this organization at? So what I told them was they had a lot of legacy issues. So what I told them was, first of all, I'm not going to take this account until I study your reports for the last 10 years. your communication reports, annual reports. And that also meant that I, at a personal level, had to go back 10 years to study all their media mentions for that 10 years, for 10 years before I met them. And while I studied all these things, it took me about 3 months to just study this organization, study patterns. You would see that when a child, when there was going to be, they wanted to oust someone, you would see accidents are happening and patterns. There's a certain day where strikes would happen. On a certain month, on a certain day, it will be announced, and you know, and you can tell when there was, and so and people from another far corner of somebody from another far corner of a country would be saying how that hospital has killed 20,000 people, which is not possible in any hospital for that matter. And so it just went to say how many people would say things, and you have no way of communicating because you're also afraid of communicating, and you have no way of containing them. And that was my responsibility to come in. So then it meant that, first of all, I had to deal with social media comments, because every time you are saying something, somebody is saying you are lying, you bastards, you one of all manner of things. And so you have to deal with these comments to bring them from A to B until the day they will get to Z, slowly by slowly. That then meant that I had to create content that they would say, wow, so you guys also do this, so you guys also do this. Introducing them to the cancer center, for instance. I had never up to that point ever stepped in a cancer room. I didn't even know how it looks like. But when I'm taking this tour, I realized that these people actually have an entire, department for cancer, and it treats hundreds and hundreds of people every day. And so you take them on a tour, live tour, where they see this is the machine that does A, this is the one that does B, and they begin to appreciate, okay, so we hate these people for nothing. And over time, when people, I remember even there was a time when we had about 300 comments, and in those comments, there's somebody who went and said, is it just me, or this organization is hiding comments? Because they want to speak negative, and they are now alone. I hope I've responded.
Yes, you have. Awesome. Thank you for that. Very interesting, for sure. And thank you for expounding on that. All right, Cynthia, let us just expound more in regards to leadership and communication. So, how can leaders use communication to shape organizational culture?
Thank you very much, Ms. Mathani, for that question. So, it's quite easy to do that, and I'll explain that in about 4 points. So, the first one, and probably one of the easiest ways to do that, is to have leaders who are model examples of exactly what they would want their organization to emulate. So, we say leaders are ideally the what you would call the thermostat of the organization. So, a lot of people behave exactly how their leaders behave. So, if you want to create and communicate a proper culture for your organization, one, obviously, you have to walk the talk. That means everything you do should be a reflection of exactly what you want that company to reflect. The other one that I'm usually very keen on is being able to embrace transparency as a leader. More than anything else, transparent leaders are more welcome than people who are dodgy or trying to hide behind the curtains. It is difficult. Yes, it is absolutely difficult. However, being able to build a company and an organization on trust could foster a lot more sense of safety, especially for the employees, more than anything else, and it will allow them to speak up over a period of time. And the other one is actually listening. There's something that in communication we call active listening. So you're not listening to respond, but you're listening actively to understand, then respond accordingly to allow people to be able to express themselves in a safe space. Now, that is one of those things. The other thing is having a very clear vision and clear values. This means while you're curating your company, the first thing every time someone walks into your company, they should be able to see your mission, your vision, and your values. And they should be very memorable. They should be very easy to understand. They should be the things that people integrate in their daily work. That means from their behavior change, from their behaviors to how they articulate the services of the company or the products of the company, when they're talking about and reviewing the company, that is how they should be talking about. It's making it very clear in the vision, the mission, and the values as well. And the most powerful thing, and I believe Glory and Chris will agree with me, is being able to utilize the storytelling, being able to infuse storytelling in articulating your core values and your vision and your mission. You get that in there, it becomes very easy for you to be able to articulate what your company stands for. And most people downplay these things. I think it was today we were reviewing a company, and really we realized it's been in operation for about maybe 20, 30 years. They don't have a vision, mission, and values. None whatsoever. So over a period of time, they just been working, but then nobody can explain what they stand for, who they stand for. And then at this point, they're very confused. So they do not know how to do anything for the organization because everybody is pulling in different directions, assuming that's what is supposed to be happening. Now, another thing that leaders should be able to do is to empower open communication more than anything else. Let people find creative ways of responding. So that means as a leader, you should be able to create multiple channels that people can talk to you through. To be able to give feedback to you, to be able to make the company better. Because at the end of the day, what most people say is we're here to work, but also to grow ourselves. And nobody wants to kill the cow that they're getting the milk from. So if that is the core of the business, then it begets the leaders to create channels to be able to get good feedback. And then lastly, it's being able to celebrate wonderful success stories. So that means you're having a conversation beyond the numbers. It's not 30%, or you'll say, we had an increase in sales by 40%. What does that mean? They're great numbers, yes, but what does that mean for the organization and the people that work there? The more you humanize those numbers, the easier it is for people to understand who they are, where they are, and they're able to own the brand that they're speaking from. And I think if you're able to do all these things, you will have a great conversation within your organization, and the communication channels and the communication and the culture will be in line with what it is that you're trying to shape it. Thank you, Ms. Mithani.
Having a clear vision and values make it memorable and easy to understand. That is what has stood out for me. All right. Thank you for that, Cynthia. What strategies can be employed to enhance communication in a diverse team?
Okay, so I happen to work in a very huge organization, and there are multiple teams that work across the departments to make the organization a success. And so, the things that I have learned about working in such a space is you have to be able to create multiple communication styles, because not everyone will be able to interact the same way. And I'll give an example. If you allow for multiple channels, that means someone will be able to talk to you face to face, or they can interact using emails, or they do via online. Those should be channels and discussions that are open for any person who's there. So from the onset, it's very clear for one, or for any organization, for a diverse team to be able to communicate, open multiple channels that allow people to express themselves and to be able to get work done. Otherwise, it becomes a bit difficult if you only restrict people to a certain way of communication. Be like, you can only talk to me if you call me. We can only sort out something if you come to my office in person. But maybe there are people who, I remember Chris was talking about introverts, right? So an introvert may not be able to come talk to you in person because that's not who they are. They do not know how to handle a situation in person, but they don't mind giving you a call. They don't mind sending a message or a WhatsApp to be able to articulate what their issue is or what they think can be done to make an organization better. So creating multiple channels of communication is a fantastic strategy for that. The other thing that I'd advocate for is offering clarity and it's called consciousness, right? That means you are striving to have very clear, concise, and very inclusive language. So that means avoid big words. You're not trying to create an organization where people need to use corporate jargon, and there's a lot of jokes on TikTok, I believe, about corporate lingo. We'll circle back to that. Um, and many other lingos. Sorry, they skip my mind at this point. But all these jargons make it very, very difficult for people to articulate. And for those people who are not interested in those things, they just want to go straight to the point. It makes it difficult for them to have conversations around improving the organization and improving themselves. So if you can't cut out the jargon, cut out the technical terms, and any cultural references that may make it very, very difficult for people to be understood universally, then it will allow people to have greater, more open conversations. Now, the other thing that for me I find very, very important is having pre meeting communication. And I'll explain. What this means is, say, if meetings are or the primary communication channel, right? So consider sending maybe the agendas, the discussion points ahead of time. And for people who want to understand what this is about, then they know how to prepare when they're coming, as opposed to coming and then finding themselves ambushed. So that's a strategy that people can use when you're trying to have conversations for multiple teams. This allows everybody who's coming into the meeting to know exactly why they're here, what it is they're trying to achieve, and if there's anything that needs to be added or there are points that are not covered, then they're fully aware, as opposed to coming to a meeting and they have no clue whatsoever on what to do, where to go, how to discuss anything. So that for me is important. So we've said you have to recognize the differences and offer multiple channels of communication. We've said you have to be very clear and very concise with the languages that you're using. We have said you have to give things like pre-meeting communication ahead of time so that people can plan for themselves what is happening. And then the other one is, of course, offering the multiple channels of communication so that people understand if we're not able to understand each other on one channel, what else is available for me to be able to articulate myself properly.
What was notable for me has to be open multiple channels for people to express themselves and they will work effectively. Awesome. Thank you, Cynthia, for your insights and definitely get rid of jargon. Yeah, nobody wants to trying to understand ambiguous words, right? All right. So moving on. How important is personal branding in professional communication?
Sorry, you said in professional communication, yes?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So I think personal branding is the front and center of communication. If you're not building your brand and if you're not building a strong brand around communication, then I'm not sure what it is we're doing. Because if you're in communication, you should have a very, very clear brand. Now, how do you get there? Well, it's very easy, and I'll give very clear points. It starts with you have to um, craft a very clear mission and message for yourself. Like, who are you? What's your persona? How does it look like? Who do you want people to associate you with? How do you sit and say, I am an expert in PR? What around those things have you started articulating? For example, do you participate in PR conversations? Do you get into groups with this people who have communications? Are you networking with the likes of Chris? Do you seek guidance from people like that? If you are a PR expert, or if you are a communication expert, or if you are a personal branding expert, then you need to look and breathe exactly that. So that means articulating your value proposition from the onset. So when people look for you, they know exactly why they're looking for you. So what are the specific skills that you have? Is it knowledge, the experience? What are you bringing to the table? So if you're able to articulate those things, then people can be able to say you have a very clear brand of who you are. Now, the other thing is being able to network strategically. That means being in the presence of or being seen with people like Mudani, right? So you are in spaces that create strong relationships in line with what it is you are trying to say. Are you an IT expert? Are you a cybersecurity expert? Where do we see you? Where do we find you? Are you attending this industry events? Are you participating in online forums? What are you doing to ensure that when people say your name, they instantly associate you with those spaces? Um, the other thing I'd say is being able to curate your online presence. Okay. So when people go through your profile, is it on LinkedIn, on TikTok, and Instagram, on X? What messages are they seeing? Are they in line with what you're trying to give? Right. So if you go to my LinkedIn profile, it says Cynthia Mwangi, PRSK. Obviously, that has to be the first thing. And then strategic, corporate PR communications and media practitioner, because that's who I am. That's what I do every day. So, on your online spaces, what does it say about you? What is your bio reading? Does it say the right thing? Does it articulate who you are in person? Now, other than that, it's being able to communicate with confidence. That means you should be an authority in your space, whether it's through education or trying very much to maintain and being present in spaces that show that you are an expert. That means you're constantly in media, sharing your opinion about or your expertise in the particular field that you're good at. Those are the things that will make you very distinct and show the confidence in the fact that you are indeed the expert that you are in your field. And lastly, you have to be very authentic, okay? One of the things that people have a challenge with is fighting between fake it till you make it and being authentic. Back in the day, like for millennials, fake it till you make it was a thing. For the newer age, it's be present, be authentic, be yourself. If you're not yourself, then there's nothing you're doing. So if you truly are the brand that you say you are, you have to show up authentically, because you cannot sustain a fake presence. But being authentic, being yourself with your quirkiness, with your mishaps, however they are, people will accept you and acknowledge the fact that you are an expert. Yes, however, there's certain things about you that are a bit off, but it's fine. I'll give an example of someone like Bright Gamali. Bright Gamali is a fantastic cybersecurity guy, but he also allows himself to be human. You will see him go out sometimes and he'll share those moments because he's authentic. He's not trying to create an image of who he is not, so that one day when you meet him somewhere, he doesn't look shocked or you don't look shocked, like, but you told me you're an expert, what are you doing here? He presents himself as who he is. He's an expert. He does some karate and kung fu things, and then he also, once in a while, you'll see him out enjoying himself, being the most authentic version of himself. So if you're able to present all these things, it's very easy for you to have a very professional communication and personal brand without worry. Thank you, Ms. Mathoni.
Network strategically, and what message is your audience saying? Definitely, those were my takeaways. Thank you, Cynthia. Moving on, can you give examples of how effective communication has helped mitigate a crisis?
So, because I do not know how diverse the group of 108 plus ourselves who are listening is, allow me to use international examples because international examples cut across. And I'll give, I think, if I'm able to, maybe two or three if you give me time, depending on how much time you will give me. So
Just
let's
two
start with the
will do.
example of Starbucks. So back in the day, in about 2008, Starbucks had this issue where two black men showed up and they were not ordering anything yet because they explained that they were leaving, they were waiting for a colleague, and they didn't leave, obviously. So the manager ended up calling the police. The men were arrested and they were held for several hours before being released afterwards. Now, of course, the news spread like wildfire. It was absolutely insane. The media ate it up, and everything was going up ablaze. Now, of course, the chairman of Starbucks showed up and he apologized. And in his words, he said, I am embarrassed, I am ashamed, and I think what occurred was reprehensible at every single level, obviously. Then, as if that was not enough, he went an extra mile. He closed all the branches. And when I mean all the branches, at that point was 8,000 stores were closed. And they had all their 175,000 employees trained in racial bias. And for me, it was a necessary move. It was a great move. If you're in PR, you look at such an action and think, it was not just for PR. It was a great action for someone to be able to be sensitive enough in the organization to make such a move to ensure it never happens again. So it's not just investing in a business, it doesn't care about just making the money. It's being able to invest in the people who actually use the product itself. So for me, I think that was a fantastic example of what PR can do for you. Now, the other one was something that we experienced a couple of years ago when Samsung had their batteries that were exploding. And now everybody was panicked because it's Samsung. What are the odds that something like that would be happening? So I think it was the Note 7 devices that were exploding everywhere. And which was scary was when a couple of them exploded in an airport and others on the plane. So you can imagine you're on a plane and then your phone just heats up and then explodes. How ridiculous is that? So, of course, they did a background check. They figured out that there was a challenge with their batteries. So, how did they do? For starters, they recalled all their devices, which was the Note 7, all of their devices, every single one that was that had exploded, that had been sold, that was in transit anywhere. They were all recalled across the world to make sure that it doesn't happen again. So, of course, they investigated, trying to figure out what exactly is happening. Is there a reason why? So, when they found out what the reason was, they started replacing all the phones that caught fire, every single one of them. And they didn't just do that. On top of that, of recalling them and explaining to people in great detail why exactly they were exploding and what measure they had given, they also refunded and refurbished all the phones that had issues. So, especially for a brand that faces that kind of international attention, they had to be very categorical and very clear about their communication so that there is no information that is seeping through the cracks. So if you don't get it right, then it will mess up the entire thing. So they were very precise. They recalled, they shared the information, and they did that consistently. And like, okay, so your phone, you're in where? You're in Kenya, you're in Tanzania, send it back. We will send you a new phone and we will tell you where the issue was and we'll figure it out together. Is that okay? And I think a lot of Samsung people after that ended up still buying the phone. Now, the last one, I think this one we all remember. Not all of us watch the American football until there was a crisis between Nike and a guy called Colin Kaepernick. So let me explain what happened. So back then, Kaepernick was the quarterback in for those who watch football for 96ers. So he was on the bench that day, and when the national anthem played just before the pregame, he went on one knee. Okay. So that was a huge deal. And it was a huge deal because at that point, they were protesting police brutality. And the minute he did that, he ended up unemployed and held up in controversy because, nobody wanted to associate with him. But not exactly everyone, because people like Nike were like, okay, I see the point, I see where this is going. So again, that was in 2016. So 2 years later, 2018, Nike come up with this brilliant idea to work together with Colin to do a campaign for their clothing for NFL. So they have him wear their clothes, okay, of Nike, of course, with their title, Just Do It, right? So, but they create a different slogan. And the new campaign was talking about believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. Now, anyone who knows and followed this campaign, you remember exactly what happened. anyone who owned a Nike apparently took up all their merchandise. They tore up all the Nike logos and burnt them. And everybody started saying, boycott Nike, this is not the way to go, down with Nike. And it was such a big deal. Well, at that point, of course, Kopenick and Nike apologized, did not apologize, to be clear. They did not apologize. They stood firm and they said, come what may, we will stand with it. So, for the most part, for anyone who has done PR, they would tell you it was a complete nightmare. But here's the thing that was found out much later. Once the dust had finally settled, turns out the sales had increased by 31%. And nobody said anything. Can you imagine that? 31% increase on top of people assuming that there was an issue. Because Nike had created such a strong brand, and Kaepernick was also such a strong brand. Being able to stand solid at a time of crisis and at a time when movements were starting to grow, it stood the test of time. It meant Nike had seen beyond themselves and seen beyond what was happening at that point to see where the future was, which was associating and standing for something. Thank you, Ms. Joroge. I'm hoping those examples are good enough.
Yes, they definitely are. Thank you for those two stories. I've heard the very first one for the very first time, but the second one I've actually heard it before. Thank you for those two examples. Now, finally, what role does feedback play in effective communication?
Thank you very much. So I think feedback is quite an easy conversation to have. Then I know Gloria had alluded to it as well. There's some pointers that she had given. So we and I think feedback is quite the engine of communication because it allows for improvement. It drives improvement. So you don't just have um, communication going up or communication going down. It's a two-way street where you send something, I receive something, and then we sit and think through it and see whether it's working or it's not. So I think one of the things that is very key for me is being able to provide constructive feedback. And what does that look like? It looks like someone being very active to give something feedback that is actionable, feedback that is timely, that has positive reinforcement and is very specific. What I love about feedback, and especially if you're sourcing for feedback, is you want to ask in regards to the kind of conversation you're having. And like, okay, so while we're handling a PR campaign, you'll ask, during this period, what did you learn about company X? During this period, what values do you think this company stands for? And if you don't ask these questions, you'll not be able to understand maybe the extent of your campaign or how effective it was and whether you need to work on something. So if you're able to ask specific questions, then you're able to get specific feedback and you're able to have actionable things to do in the next campaign to be able to help you improve on your product or your company or your service. The other thing for me is usually timely feedback. You want to be able to operate within a certain timeline so that if it's a new product that you're launching, then the feedback is within the launch of the product so that if there's something that needs to be fixed within that period, then you're able to do it and the turnaround time is easier. And the other thing I love about feedback is you have to be able to create a safe enough space for your the people that you're working with to be able to trust you enough with their feedback. Because if you've ever noticed someone who'll ask for feedback and they're usually not overly friendly, people will just go, yeah, it's fine. It's okay. We're good. Don't worry. Everything is fine. And nobody wants to end up with feedback like that. You want to have people who will be very honest and like, listen, Cynthia, I thank you very much for the product. It was wonderful. However, is it possible if this car can have five wheels? I was thinking about it the other day, and then they can explain why they think your car needs to have five wheels, right? And being creating a space that allows people to give you honest feedback means your product is reviewed or your service is reviewed better, and your organization as well, for that matter, is able to talk to the person and have genuine, authentic feedback in the same place. Now, one of the things that we tell people when they're seeking for um, feedback is it's easy to focus on behavior rather than focusing on personality. So you could focus on how big a personality, for example, is, or how big an organization is, and then forget the behavior of the organization. Is it supporting the things that you stand for? Is its launch in line with what you as a person approve? Or do you feel like it overshadowed everything you were trying to do? Now, the thing as well about feedback, it also improves something that we had mentioned earlier, which is active listening. That means feedback requires for someone to sit and listen. Okay, it's not an argument. It's not I know better because I am. It's you sit, you listen actively and understand what this person is saying, and then if you need to ask for clarification, to ask questions to be able to understand better where this person is coming from, then that is what needs to be done. And of course, you have to be very open to honest feedback, and this means it comes from different perspectives. It could be good, it could be bad, it could be injuring sometimes, and people may not be able to articulate themselves well enough. So you'll have to deal with how they are able to express themselves to be able to understand your product. So you have to be present for that as well. And of course, you have to demonstrate some version of growth when you're listening to the feedback. So that means once the feedback is in, evaluate it, sit with the team, ask, okay, so after we launched our product, after we went through the company's profile and gave feedback to a client, or after we did one and two things, what feedback did we get? Great, let's see, let's go through it. Is it positive? Is it negative? And one of the other things we do about feedback is also active listening and social listening. That means it's something that Chris was talking about, where you are able to know ideally what the socials are saying about you. And these are people that you may not necessarily interview, but it's what the perceived is what your company is perceived as online. Well, he was talking about the hospital as well. They went mining and they found all these things that they found. So you should be able to get that info and take it back and sit and say, okay, so this is what we have found out. Then what do we do with it? How do we demonstrate that we've moved from point A to point B? What kind of strategy do we employ to ensure that people can see a great difference or some version of growth between point A and point B? So for me, one of the biggest reasons why feedback is important and why it has to be part of a strategy and part of a campaign is it allows for you to learn, and it allows for you to grow and improve in your communication style and the way your product is. And even more importantly, it shows that you are listening. Thank you so much, Miss Muthoni.
Great, Cynthia. I love that. Feedback is the engine of communication. If you haven't gotten anything out of this whole conversation, then live with that. Feedback is the engine of communication. Thank you so much for that, Cynthia. And I've actually just remembered what Glory actually said that actually stood out for me, and that was on newsletters, personalization. Yeah, sorry, personalization. Now, let me give you a secret. I actually have a separate email that I created that literally, when I actually see an interesting creator, either on LinkedIn or just any social media platform, and even YouTube, and they have a newsletter, I usually want to give out that email and then read their newsletter. And if by the time I read the third newsletter and I'm not impressed, I unsubscribe. Yeah. And I've actually gotten to understand how these guys are getting, more and more subscribers. They're able to even sell their products, sell their services, merchandise, you name it, yeah, through newsletters. And that's because of personalization. One person I would really love to shout out is Lara Costa. She is my role model here on LinkedIn. You need to subscribe to her newsletter. Let me tell you, that lady will hook you. Literally, just from the title, you open the newsletter and you just hooked. And if you follow Lara, recently she was actually banned from LinkedIn due to verification, but of course she got her account back. And of course, now you see she can't communicate on LinkedIn. So what did she do? she actually wrote an article. And I remember that day I was actually in a meeting and the notification popped up on my screen, and I'm like, what? She has been kicked out. Immediately I had to open it and read and see what is happening. And, do I also start getting jitters? What is LinkedIn up to and all that? But let me tell you, a lot of these creators have mastered the art of writing, and especially with newsletters. I don't know, have you seen how most of these guys actually have thousands of subscribers? Literally, someone like Steve Bartlett, yeah, has thousands of subscribers for a newsletter. Let me tell you, people read emails. If you think people don't read emails, people read. It's that your email is not interesting. Yeah. So how can you be able to stand out? So let's just come back home here in Kenya for the Kenyans. If you have not subscribed to Susan Wanjiko's newsletter, I don't know what's wrong with you, to be honest. Her insights on finances, especially in her newsletter, it's so personalized, so relatable. Sometimes you can even laugh. Like sometimes I can read a newsletter specifically from her. I'm not learning something, but I'm relating to it. And she has actually, provoked my thoughts, right? So let me just share with you three things. If your newsletter does not provoke someone's thoughts, it's not relatable, and it's not educational or entertaining, then what exactly are you conveying? What message are you conveying? And thank God for apps like MailChimp and so many other apps when it comes to email newsletters, that now you can actually track your analytics, that you're sending out 1,000 emails and only 50 are opening. Right? That's alarming, definitely, right? If you are actually sending 1,000 emails, at least 75% should be opening your email. 75%, yes. And actually, this is by Forbes. Yeah. That's another thing. You need to subscribe to such newsletters as well. I've subscribed to Forbes because they give insights from experts, right? Daily Mail from the UK, New York Times, right? Reading such, you're able to know emerging trends. You're able to know what is new that has popped up, right? So now this is just in regards to communication. So thank you so much for your insights, Cynthia. That was really, really lovely. And I hope my audience have actually gotten a thing or two. By the way, if you've learned something new, please drop a comment section under this event post and share with us. Tag. If Chris said something that stood out for you, tag him and share the takeaways. If Glory said something, tag her as well as Cynthia. So, dear leaders, professionals, and creators, you've heard from the experts the intricacies of communications and how to thrive in your careers and businesses today. I would like to give a vote of thanks to the amazing speakers for gracing my summit. Thank you. I truly appreciate you for taking the time to be here. My dear listeners, please do me a favor by following each one of them and sending a thank you note to their DM. Now, I wrote a post a few weeks ago on how to network, even online events. Now, let me just repeat it, right? You can actually send a DM to Paul and say, "Hey, Paul, my takeaway from this event." Okay, sorry. So, hey, Paul, so I just saw you at Miss Pothoni's day one workshop, and my takeaway was this. How about you? Right? So please also network amongst each other. Do send a connection request, but personalize it. Right? I love that the experts have actually emphasized on personalization. So tomorrow is day 2 of the Global LinkedIn Summit, and we shall be having the branding and marketing workshop. Same time, same place. A reminder that if you're looking to monetize your knowledge and expertise on LinkedIn, my upcoming masterclass that will be on the 13th of July 2024 is specially designed for you. Greatness awaits you at the LinkedIn Monetization Masterclass by clicking the link below my headline that reads Monetize Your LinkedIn Today. Remember what Jordan B. Peterson once said: when you have something to say, silence is a lie. Visibility is what's holding your next big check. So why shy from it? I am Miss Muthoni Njoroge, the LinkedIn Lioness, who rose with audacity. Have a good evening, good morning, and good day, everyone. Bye bye. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Glory. Thank you, Cynthia. Have a good night.
Good night. Bye bye.